Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You'll hear evidence in this case that will strongly suggest to you and show you that the time Danny Welte shot his wife, Echo Welte, he was in a highly emotional state. He had been depressed, and he was not functioning like the Danny Welte who had lived for some 40 years. You'll hear evidence that will demonstrate to you or suggest to you that this act was an aberration of character. No evidence will be suggested to you that he was an evil man. As Mr. Wilson just told you, this happened on November 17th. On November 12th, his son had just committed suicide. He dearly loved that boy that threw his life into a tailspin, which was already into a tailspin because the woman he loved didn't want anything else to do with it. Had run him out of the house. He's living basically out of a bag between Lancaster, where his folks lived, and a bag he had in the car where he kept all of his personal effects, including the gun. He had that all the time in the bag. And even at the funeral, which occurred the day of this incident, November 17th. You'll hear evidence that they were arguing, Echo and Danny, arguing. Heated arguments, even at the funeral. And this goes on just about nonstop. On this day, November 17th, when Danny leaves the hotel where the wife and the children are staying because, as Mr. Wilson said, they don't want to stay in the house where their son just committed suicide. Danny leaves the hotel and he goes to Amy Elslager's house, whom you'll hear from. He went to her house because she didn't go to the funeral. That was going to cause some problems. And he had a relationship with Amy. Not a real close one, but a relationship. They were really good friends and they had something going on. But that relationship started after Echo told Danny that she wanted a divorce and basically he had to leave, period. So that was months later, and Danny worked with this girl out at Kraft. Not at Kraft. She worked in some kind of firm that they had a connection with Kraft. That's how he got to know her. So that was a situation with him and Amy on November 17th. Amy wanted him to come by her house that day to pick up some food and stuff that Danny had left there that had been prepared for the funeral. So he go and to pick up some flowers that she had bought and didn't take to the funeral. But she had the flowers that she had bought, grieving flowers, if you will, and to pick those items up from her. So he drives to her house. She goes on Missouri Street, and he's leaving from Days Inn. He goes to her house to pick those items up, and while he's there, Amy says, we need some space. You need to be just concentrating on grieving for your son and getting your life straightened out. And we'll still remain friends, and then we'll see what happens. Well, an already depressed fellow, very depressed. He had nobody. He wasn't allowed to see his kids. He didn't have his wife, who hated him, and he says that to the police, or in a statement he made. And he had his very good friend and girlfriend just tell him that you don't need to be in my life for the time being until you get yours straightened out. So he decides he'll go back to the hotel and go swimming with the children. And he does. He drives back to the hotel, but when he gets there, he learns that Echo, his wife, is out of her car smoking a cigarette. So when he pulls into the parking lot, he sees her car, the Yukon, sitting there, and he pulls in next to it. He gets out of his car and starts to talk with Echo. She opens the car door, and he's standing there talking to her. Well, the talking very quickly turns into arguing. It's not long after that Bethany and her boyfriend, Andrew Wellman, go downstairs from the hotel to go to Andrew's car to get a charger for his cell phone. And they walk by the Yukon where Danny and Echo are arguing. And they hear the arguing real loud. As they pass that car to come to Andrew's car, they get the charger and they're walking back, and they're still heated argument. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence will show you that they argued heatedly right there by her car for almost 2 hours. He didn't pull in and get a gun and shoot her. They argued loudly and vociferously for 2 hours. Hour and 50 minutes to be precise. And Danny couldn't tell Detective Lowry just what happened. He couldn't tell him exactly why he got the gun and tried to shoot her. But he was in such a state that something happened, he snapped, he stepped through his car, gets his gun out of his bag, and he's trying to shoot her. He can't even load the gun properly. He's in such a state he can't get a shell in the chamber. He's squirting slide like that, nothing's happening. He didn't know if he had a shell in the chamber or not, because he snapped it, she took off. Mr. Dykes came over, just as Mr. Wilson told you. And of course, when Echo saw the gun, she started yelling and screaming. And Mr. Dykes, standing outside smoking a cigarette, talking on the cell phone, heard her and ran to the car and tried to stop what was happening. And he tried to tell Danny, don't, but Danny was in such a state of mind that wasn't going to happen. Get out of my way. And so, they're just seconds we're talking about. He tells Echo, Mr. Dykes does, take off, run. And she starts to run. And then Mr. Dykes runs after her. Well, suddenly Danny passes him. And he shoots her. He was in such a state of rage, Mr. Danny Welte was, there was no stopping him. Absent of tackle and put him on the ground and take the gun away from him. The evidence will be that he was not thinking. And you'll draw that inference from his conduct. Because those actions were not the actions of a rational man, and you'll see that. It was not his brain guiding his conduct, it was his raw emotion, and he was in a state of rage. We've heard all the evidence and studied it, and studied the instructions the judge gives you. We're going to ask you at the conclusion of this case, when we get to come back and talk to you again, like Mr. Wilson said, we're going to ask you to find that Danny's conduct was a result of the influence of sudden passion that made him behave the way he did. That made him behave differently than the 40-year-old man that ever behaved in his life. We'll ask you for a verdict of manslaughter, because this is clearly not murder first degree. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. James.